It was a warm afternoon in May 2025 in Ouagadougou when Ibrahim Traoré was adjusting his tie in the mirror of his presidential office. At 36, the young president of Burkina Faso was preparing for one of the most important events on his agenda, the annual banquet with ambassadors and international dignitaries. "Mr. President, the car is waiting," announced Moussa Kababore, his chief of staff, as he entered the room respectfully. Ibrahim nodded, checking his appearance in the mirror once more. His navy blue suit was impeccable, as diplomatic protocol always required. In the main ballroom of the hotel, splendid, the most luxurious hotel in Ouagadougou, about 200 guests were already taking their seats. Ambassadors from France, the United States, China, Germany and other countries were eagerly awaiting the arrival of the Burkina president. The tables were decorated with tropical flowers and the country's finest china. The menu had been carefully planned, international dishes mixed with local specialties. "This dinner is crucial for our diplomatic relations," Dr. Alonso Ouedraogo, the foreign minister, explained to the aides present. "Several trade agreements will be discussed informally." Ibrahim Traoré. The president's wife was checking the final details of her attire as First Lady. She knew that her presence was essential to the success of the event. "You nervous?" her personal aide asked. "I always am when it comes to these official events," Ajara replied, smiling. "But Ibrahim knows how to handle these situations." The presidential motorcade was lined up at the entrance to the presidential palace. 3 armored vehicles were waiting with security, detailing the route to the hotel. The presidential motorcade left the presidential palace at 6:30 p.m., heading down Avenue Kwame Nkrumah toward the hotel. Splendid. Ibrahim watched through the bulletproof window as Ouagadougou's busy streets bustled in the late afternoon. Street vendors lined the sidewalks, offering fruit, iced water, and handicrafts to passers-by. "How's the traffic, Captain?" Ibrahim asked the security chief driving the vehicle. "It's okay, Mr. President. We'll be there on time," the officer replied, keeping his eyes on the traffic on the streets. Ibrahim smiled as he watched children chasing a makeshift soccer ball in a vacant lot. Even with all his presidential responsibilities, he never lost touch with the reality of his people. On the bench next to him, Ajara mentally reviewed the names of the main guests she would greet at the event. "The French ambassador always asks about our educational projects," she commented, "and the German ambassador loves to discuss sustainable agriculture." Traffic began to slow as they approached the city center. It was rush hour, and the streets were congested with motorbikes, cars, and pedestrians. Ibrahim took the opportunity to get a better look at everyday life in Ouagadougou. Women carried baskets on their heads, men chatted in small groups under the trees, and young vendors walked between the vehicles selling various goods. "Mr. President," said Moussa Kababore, checking his watch, "we still have 15 minutes before the official arrival time." "Perfect," replied Ibrahim. "I prefer to arrive on time. It is a matter of respect for the guests." The vehicle was slowly moving along Avenue Charles de Gaulle when Ibrahim noticed something that caught his attention on the right side of the street at the traffic lights on Avenue Charles de Gaulle and Rue Maurice Bishop. The presidential motorcade was forced to stop. The light was red, and the traffic was congested. It was at that moment that Ibrahim Traoré saw something that would completely change the course of his evening. A child of about 8 years old, barefoot and wearing a worn T-shirt, was walking among the stopped cars, selling small bags of ice water. Chao. The boy was carrying an aluminum basin on his head, balancing it with one hand, while with the other he banged on the windows of the cars, trying to get the attention of the drivers. "Oh, fresh! Ice water!" the boy shouted in French and in Moor, the local language. His thin voice echoed above the noise of the traffic. Ibrahim leaned forward to get a better look through the bulletproof window. The boy had the dark skin typical of the Burkina base, short hair, and a determined smile despite the circumstances. His clothes were simple, a faded red T-shirt and patched blue shorts. "Mr. President, the light has changed," the driver informed him, noticing that Ibrahim was focused on something on the street. "Wait a moment," Ibrahim said, raising his hand. He continued to watch the child, who was now approaching his vehicle. The boy did not know that the president of the country was inside that official car. To him, he was just another potential client. The boy tapped lightly on the tinted window of the presidential vehicle. "Oh, fresh, monsieur," he said, smiling hopefully. Ibrahim felt something stir in his chest. There was something in the determination of that boy, in the way he worked tirelessly under the scorching sun, that touched the president's heart deeply. "What time is it?" Ibrahim asked. 6:45 p.m., sir," Musa replied, finding the question strange. "The banquet will begin in 15 minutes. Ibrahim looked back at the boy who was already walking away toward other cars. A decision was forming in his mind. Ibrahim Traoré watched the child walk away, carrying his basin of water on his head, with the dexterity of someone who did this every day. Something about that simple scene touched his heart deeply as a father and leader. "Stop the car," Ibrahim said suddenly. The driver glanced in the rearview mirror, confused. "Mr. President," I said. "Stop the car now," Ibrahim repeated, his voice firm, but not authoritative. Musa Kababore leaned forward, concerned. "Mr. President, we have a schedule to meet. The ambassadors are waiting." "The ambassadors can wait." "A few more minutes," Ibrahim interrupted, already opening the vehicle door. Security immediately went on alert. "Sir, it's not safe," protested the captain of the Presidential Guard. "We are not deviating from established protocol." Ibrahim smiled patiently. "Captain, I am in the middle of my own capital, surrounded by my own people. What is the danger?" Before anyone could protest further, Ibrahim was out of the car. Ajara watched him through the window, knowing her husband well enough to know that he had made a decision he would not change. "You know Ibrahim," she told the nervous aides. "When he makes up his mind, you better support him." Out on the street, Ibrahim began walking toward the boy, who was still weaving between the cars a few yards away. Drivers began to notice the strange movement. A man in an expensive suit walking down the busy avenue. A few security guards quietly emerged from the other vehicles in the convoy, keeping their distance, but ready to act if necessary. The water-elling boy had his back turned when Ibrahim approached. "Excuse me," the president said, gently touching the child's shoulder. The boy turned, surprised to see an elegant man addressing him. "Good afternoon," Ibrahim said, smiling warmly. "What is your name?" The boy was shy for a moment, not used to so much attention from well-dressed adults. "My name is Burma Musura," the boy replied, looking down shyly. His voice was soft, but there was a precocious maturity in it that came with children who have to work from an early age. Ibrahim bent down to the boy's eye level. "Burma is a beautiful name. It means the one who brings joy, doesn't it?" The boy smiled, surprised that this elegant man knew the meaning of his name. "Yes, Missy. My mother told me that. And tell me, Burma," Ibrahim continued, his voice full of fatherly affection, "have you eaten today?" The simple question echoed in the air like a sigh and thunderclap. Burma hesitated, fiddling nervously with the handle of the bowl he was carrying. I ate some rice this morning, Monsieur." Ibrahim felt his heart sink. He looked around and saw other small vendors nearby, a reality he knew, but now it hit him with renewed force. "Where are your parents, Burma?" he asked gently. "My mother is at home with my little brother who is sick. My father went to work on the cotton farm, but he hasn't been back for 2 months," the boy explained, his voice strong despite the sadness in his eyes. Meanwhile, people around him began to stop and watch the unusual scene. A man in an expensive suit was crouched down talking to a boy selling water in the middle of the street. Some were already taking out their cell phones to film. Musa Kabore approached discreetly. "Mr. President, we really need—" Ibrahim raised his hand, interrupting him without taking his eyes off Burma. "How many bags of water do you have there?" he asked the boy. 23, monsieur. They cost 50 francs each." Ibrahim smiled. "I want to buy them all." Burma's eyes widened in surprise. "All of them, Massi? But you won't be able to drink that much water." Ibrahim laughed, a genuine laugh that caught even more attention from the people around him. "You're right. but I have a better idea. Ibrahim stood up and motioned for Musa to come over. I need you to get enough money to buy all of Burma's water and some extra for him to take home. Musa, even though he was worried about the time, obeyed immediately. Meanwhile, Ibrahim continued talking to the boy. Burma, do you know any other children who work selling things on the street? Yes, Missy. There's Osman who sells peanuts and Fatima who sells fruit, the boy said, pointing to other children in the area. Ibrahim looked around and saw at least 6 children working on the same corner. They all looked to be between 7 and 12 years old, a harsh but common reality on the streets of Ouagadougou. Could you call them over here? Ibrahim asked. Burma nodded and ran over to the other boy, and girls, explaining that there was a man who wanted to speak to them. Within minutes, a small group of child workers had formed around Ibrahim. Some were shy, others curious, all intrigued by this elegant man who had stopped in the middle of the street to talk to them. Good afternoon, children, Ibrahim said warmly. Do you all work here every day? Yes, monsieur, they answered in unison, some in French, others in Moor. And have you eaten today? He asked the same question he had asked BMA. The answers were varied. Some had eaten a little in the morning, others had not eaten anything yet. One little girl said she had only had tea with sugar. Ibrahim felt a mixture of sadness and determination rise in his chest. Meanwhile, 200 penseupters away, a luxurious banquet awaited him with dishes that cost more than these children saw in a week. At that moment his decision was made. He turned to Musa. Cancel my participation in the banquet. Mr. President, Musa exclaimed, alarmed. The ambassadors, the diplomatic agreements, explain to the ambassadors that an urgent matter of state has arisen, Ibrahim said firmly. And I am not lying. Musa Kabul was visibly nervous, clutching the phone as he tried to process the president's decision. Mr. President, with all due respect, this banquet has been planned for months. We have important diplomatic commitments. Ibrahim turned to him, his eyes shining with a determination that Musa knew well. Musa, tell me which is more important, dining with ambassadors who are guaranteed 3 meals a day, or ensuring that these children have at least 1 meal today. The Chief of Staff understood that there was no argument that would change the President's mind at that moment. What do you want me to do? He asked, surrendering to the decision. Call the best restaurant in town. I want them to prepare a full meal for how many children do we have here? Ibrahim counted, quickly. There were 12 boys and girls for 15 children to be sure. Rice, chicken, vegetables, fruit, juice. A real meal. Burma tugged discreetly on the sleeve of Ibrahim's suit. Monsieur, you don't have to do this. We're used to know. Ibrahim interrupted gently, bending down again to speak at the boy's level. You shouldn't be used to this. You're children. You should be at school, playing, studying, not selling water on the street. While Musa made the necessary phone calls, Ibrahim continued talking to the children. He discovered that Usman, 9, was supporting his sick grandmother. Fatima, 8, was helping her mother who sold food at the market. Each child had a story of early responsibility and deferred dreams. Do you go to school? Ibrahim asked sometimes. Burma replied, when we don't have to work. And would you like to go to school every day? This time all the children responded excitedly in the affirmative. They spoke of kind teachers, of learning to read better, of dreams of becoming doctors, teachers, engineers. Ajara had gotten out of the car and approached the group. The children were even more impressed to see such an elegant woman join their conversation. Hello, children, she said sweetly. I'm Ajara. Are you his wife? Fatima asked, pointing to Ibrahim. Yes, I am. And I have a daughter your age, Ajara replied, smiling. Within 20 minutes, 3 La Palmier restaurant vehicles had arrived at the corner of Avenue Charles de Gaulle. The cooks had hastily prepared a full meal. Jollof rice, grilled chicken, vegetable salad, fresh fruit, and natural juices. Everything was packed in individual containers and heated. Ibrahim had asked for a makeshift table to be set up in the shade of a large nearby tree. Security guards set up a discreet perimeter, keeping onlookers at a respectful distance, but allowing people to see what was going on. "Come on, children," Ibrahim said, gesturing to the group. "It's time for dinner." The dozen or so children approached the table timidly. Many had never seen so much food together, much less a meal prepared, especially for them. "Burma," Ibrahim called, "would you mind leading a prayer of thanks?" The boy was surprised by the request, but nodded. With his small hands clasped together, he said a simple prayer in Moor, giving thanks for the food and for the kindness of the kind man in the suit. While the children ate, Ibrahim and Ajara sat with them on the grass under the tree. It was a surreal scene. The presidential couple dressed elegantly for a diplomatic banquet, sharing a meal on the ground with child laborers. "This chicken is very tasty," commented, his mouth full. "Better than the food at the banquet that I would have missed," replied Ibrahim, smiling. People passing by on the street stopped to watch. Many took photos and videos. Some recognized the president and were moved by his attitude. An elderly vendor approached and said in Moor, "May God bless you, President. Today you have shown yourself to be a true father of the people." During the meal, Ibrahim spoke individually to each child. He asked about their families, their schools, their dreams. He wrote down their names, ages and situations in a small notebook that he always carried. "Why are you doing this?" asked Fatima curiously. Ibrahim thought for a moment before answering. "Because you are the future of after the children had finished eating." Ibrahim stood up and asked everyone to pay attention. The sun was beginning to set, painting the Ouagadougou sky with orange hues. "Children, I want to make a few promises to you today," he said, his voice firm and sincere. "First promise, tomorrow my team will come here to meet each of your families. We want to better understand your situations and see how we can help." Burma raised his hand shyly. "Are you really going back?" "Not just back," Ibrahim replied. "I will make sure that you have better opportunities." Second promise, all of you who want to go to school regularly will have scholarships, materials, uniforms, lunch, everything guaranteed. The children's eyes lit up with emotion. Some began to cry with joy. Third promise, Ibrahim continued. Your families will receive support so that you will not have to work on the streets, microcredit programs for your mothers, vocational training, opportunities for decent work. Ajara approached him and whispered, "Are you sure we can do all this?" "I am," Ibrahim replied determinedly. "If we can't take care of our own children, what kind of leaders are we?" He turned back to the group, and the last promise, every first Friday of the month, I will be here not as president, but as your friend, to find out how you are, how school is doing, how your families are doing. Fatima ran up to Ibrahim and hugged him. "Thank you, Mr. President." Only then did the children realize that this kind man was indeed the president of the country. "Are you really the president?" Usman asked, impressed. "Yes, I am. But today, here with you, I am just Ibrahim, who cares about your well-being." Musa approached discreetly. "Mr. President, the ambassadors are asking, tell the ambassadors that I had the most important dinner of my life," Ibrahim interrupted, "and that tomorrow we will begin work on a national program to protect working children." At that moment, Ibrahim knew that he had lost a diplomatic banquet, but he had gained something much more valuable, the trust and genuine affection of his people. 6 months after that afternoon on the avenue, Charles de Gaulle, Burkina Faso, had become an international benchmark for child protection programs. The BMA Program, as it was affectionately called, had taken more than 15,000 children off the streets and into schools. Ibrahim was in his presidential office when Moussa Cabaret entered with a report in hand. "Mr. President, the program's figures are extraordinary. 97% of the children benefiting from it are attending school regularly." "And what about the families?" Ibrahim asked without taking his yes off the document he was signing. "The micro-enterprises created for mothers have a success rate of 89%. The local economy has grown significantly. Ibrahim smiled. That afternoon, when he had missed a diplomatic banquet, had become the turning point of his presidency. "Mr. President," Musa continued, "the French ambassador has requested a meeting. He wants to know the details of the program so that he can possibly replicate it in other African countries." "Make an appointment for next week," Ibrahim replied, "and make sure Burma and some of the other children attend the performance." It was now the first Friday of the month. As promised, Ibrahim left the palace at 5 p.m. for his monthly meeting with the children on the Avenue Charles de Gaulle. When he arrived, he found not only the original 12 children, but also dozens of others who had benefited from the program. "President Ibrahim," they shouted in unison when they saw him arrive. Burma, now in uniform and with notebooks under his arm, ran to hug him. "How are your studies?" Ibrahim asked, hugging the boy. "Very good. I'm learning French and math." "And look," Burma proudly showed off an essay he had scored on my hero. It was about Ibrahim. "You know I'm not a hero, right?" Ibrahim said, excited. "For us you are," replied Fatima, who was now in school herself. "You showed us that we deserve to dream too." That afternoon, sitting under the same tree where they had dined months earlier, Ibrahim listened to the children tell him about their lessons, their dreams, their progress. It was the happiest moment of his months. When he returned to the palace, Ajara was waiting for him with a smile. "How are our children today?" "Growing, learning, dreaming," Ibrahim replied. "Exactly as it should be." That simple decision to stop and ask a child if he or she had eaten had changed not only Burma's life, but the fate of thousands of Burkina children. Ibrahim learned that sometimes the most important moments do not happen at lavish banquets, but on street corners, where humanity reveals itself in its purest form.